ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another episode of Pucks on the Patio. This is episode number 3. I am Alex, here along with Jay and Jeff. Today we'll be discussing the Sabres during free agency, the NHL free agency of 2022, along with other teams. And we'll also dive into the Sabres prospect development camp, where we'll be talking about who was shining and who wasn't, and what possibly could be coming up in the future. So the first thing we're going to be discussing today is the signings the Sabres acquired in NHL free agency. More so, we're going to be starting with probably the biggest name we've acquired, Eric Comrie from the Winnipeg Jets. What are your thoughts on that, guys, as we get a new goalie?
I'm pretty excited. I know he has a lot of upside. He played behind Hellebuck, and he's a very good goalie, Hellebuck. I know Comrie, I believe, had a 10-5 record.
Yes.
A .920% save percentage. I think he has a lot of upside. I think they discussed him for a while, and I think that the scouting team, the analytics guys, they know what they're doing and what they're getting into. I definitely think, nothing against Craig, but I think he'll definitely be better. And that's probably too because of Craig's age and maybe past injuries. And I think he's going to split the net great with him. I know they're waiting for UPL to come up. So whenever he's ready, he'll be able to be elevated. But I really like the Comrie signing, definitely.
Very good. How about you, Jeff?
I think the Comrie signing is just another demonstration of Kevin Adams and the analytic team doing their work, doing their homework, knowing what they're doing, staying patient, not panicking when the other goalies started to drop off the market. Comrie rates in the top 15 goalies in all of his statistical measurements as far as the save percentage and goals against. That alone moves him ahead of any of the goalies that played for us last year. And he fits in the age bracket, I think, which is really important too.
27.
He's 27 years old, and that's really when goalies hit their stride, and that opens the door that, can he be, he's played backup, can he be more than a backup? Can he be, Marty Biron had talked about how him and Anderson were going to kind of split 50-50 with UPL, getting maybe 15 games in there. But knowing the way Donnie Granato coaches and, he'll ride a goalie, I think if Comrie, I don't want to say steals the net, but really shows dominance and plays above, what he's shown before, he potentially could be a great number 1 goalie. I'm just glad we didn't give anything up.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, and I think he's at that time in his life where he's wants to win and earn the crease, and I think he's ready for that. Hopefully, time will tell, but it'll be nice to know that, if it works out, he's that gem that maybe nobody expected, because I think this year it's going to come down to sound goaltending. It really is.
I think so. I think you both made pretty good points. You didn't have to give something up to get him. You signed him at a fairly cap-friendly deal compared to the other goalies out there like Jack Campbell and Darcy Kemper. They were getting paid well over $5 million, long-term deals. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. We'll always see. It's always good to have sound goaltending. I think that was the number 1 thing Kevin Adams needed to address, and he addressed it.
And I think, I had seen a few people on social media get upset, a few, not many, about, why don't we offer up more for Campbell, give him the long term. Well, 1, they have to want to come here, and 2, he's not going to take away the crease from UPL and Levi or possibly Portillo. So these 5-6 year contracts really aren't going to even work. Even in the thought process of trading for somebody like Quick or Gibson here, which I think they'd retire before they'd move anywhere. I think they want to retire where they are. Nothing against Buffalo. You're taking the net away from UPL and possibly Levi and Portillo. So.
And goalies were such a high priority around the league, the goalie carousel, that a lot of teams were going to overpay And I think if you were going to make a trade and try and pry somebody away from another team to be your starting goalie, you'd have to part with a desirable asset, which we didn't want to do. And to your point, it's a 2-year deal.
Yeah.
You're not married to this person for Bobrovsky, where you're married to him for the next 5 years, or the other goalies that were around the league, like you said, Campbell, he wants a 5-year deal. These guys are at the point in their career where they want financial stability, and they're signing their big contract, and they're saying, "This is my home for a while," and we're not tied to that. And we've left the door open to say, "You've played really well, we hope, and would you like another deal? Would you like to stay? Is this where you want to be home?" And maybe by that time Anderson says, "Hey, I'm good. I'm calling it a career. I'm riding off to sunny Florida with my family," and now you've got this nice tandem of UPL and Comrie.
And I do think Anderson in some way wants to know that the crease is going to be taken over by a sound veteran, and one of the kids coming in. But I do believe Comrie too wants to go out there and prove himself, because he knows it's a 2-year deal, and when that's out, I'm sure he's going to want a bit of a raise, and if it means signing here, or maybe Levi's ready, or no, he bounces and he gets more money somewhere else. Goalies have kind of become somewhat of the, a little bit of the backbone. No, I don't think you need a Carey Price, but you definitely need a sound goalie back there to get you into the playoffs, to make that big save, and then, to go farther into the playoffs.
Well, it carried Montreal to the finals. So
it did.
And of course, Carey Price is a world-class goalie.
Well, but I'm not going to pay $10 million for a goalie anymore.
That's
Maybe
the
Levi,
point.
man, that boy.
But to stress to your point, the goalie does have such a critical impact to your team that even a subpar team like Montreal can get carried to the finals by a super goalie.
Right.
It's absolutely interesting to see, like you brought up with the goalie carousel and where the other teams around the league are going. So for Eric, to come here, cap-friendly deal, fits the age group. He's got something to prove. Only playing 16 games behind Hellebuck and Winnipeg, I don't think he was ever going to get the opportunity to really be the starter there. And
just to interrupt you, their defense was nothing stellar anyways.
Yeah, they kept stressing that on TSN and NHL Network a few times, that, even ours being as young as it is, world class compared to Winnipeg. Hate to say it, but.
So we have a lot of potential there. He has the second best save percentage, minimum of 15 games behind Igor Shesterkin. So they're always in good company. And also, the day he was signed, he got married. So congratulations, Eric.
Yes, congratulations, Eric.
So,
and just one other point I want to touch on with the goalie situation. I mean, everybody was in panic mode when the Sabres re-signed Anderson. No, we're going with the same goalies that we had last year, and we're not improving, and blah blah blah. And having that in your back pocket as a backup, as a reserve, was really important. And also, I believe Donnie and Kevin, when they say that Anderson means a lot to the team. His leadership, his personality, his calming effect on the defense, his presence in the locker room.
And he'll have it, not to interrupt you, he's going to have it on the goalies too.
Exactly.
Right.
So he'll be able to even contribute to Eric's, development, and his style and his performance. So it's and they've said all last year, it was like having another coach.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
those aspects are all important, and we've invested so much in analytics. I'm sure it wasn't just on performance that they targeted Eric. It had a lot to do with his statistics.
Absolutely. Let's move on to our next topic. We see a lot of teams in the league, they're signing a lot of league minimum contracts, so don't always pick on the Sabres, because other teams are doing that too. And Kevin Adams was busy last couple of days. He brought back Lawrence Pilot from overseas back to the Sabres organization. What are your thoughts on that? Will he be a piece we can use? Will he be in the lineup? Will he be a trade piece? What is your take on it?
I was never a huge fan of Lawrence Pilot. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate in the comments. Very good foot speed, good passer. What I found is that he would shy away from the hit. He wouldn't take a hit to make a play. Now, I've heard people say maybe he's changed, maybe he's matured, he's developed, overseas, and he's, got more of a defensive game or a defensive structure, going on with him. Time will tell. To me, it's a two-way deal, so we didn't lose anything. At the very least, he plays in Rochester. He's a little older. He's going to give you that veteran leadership. And yeah, maybe in the future he could be a trade piece. So the jury's kind of out on Lawrence Pilot, but again, it's an asset you got to sign at what, $750,000 on a two-way. So I mean, to the team, we really have nothing to lose. I mean, because our defense is set, maybe minus another veteran, if you even need that. But I think our D's set, Jeff.
As you've said, it's an asset. It didn't cost you anything. A critical piece that the Sabres did need to address, and Kevin Adams has, was defensive depth.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And as we've seen in his plan, we were short on centers. We go out and we draft 3 centers. We needed defensive depth. It gives you options. Being fans, we've watched the Sabres over this whole stretch of this rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
And we're playing defensemen like Matt Tennyson and these guys that really were playing above their level. And this just gives you added depth, whether he starts here in Buffalo or he shows what he has in Rochester and somebody gets hurt or somebody outplays themselves.
Mm-hmm.
At least you've got somebody as a safety net that's got some veteran minutes to come in and say, geez, we're going on the road and Power is, struggling and we need a veteran guy to come in and we're going to shift our pairings around. It gives you that depth and it doesn't cost you anything.
Absolutely, that's what I was going to say. We didn't give up anything to get him, so.
I agree with your assessment of his previous performance where he was gun shy, wouldn't take a hit to make a play, attributed to youth, inexperience. Also, when he broke in with the team, the Sabres were really not developing players well at all.
Really were, so.
We ruined a lot of good players over that stretch. So, again, I can't fault the guy for seeing an opportunity and grabbing it. But he also knows that if he wants to make an NHL name for himself, it's through the Sabres. So, again, hope that he's learned and developed.
Yeah. I mean, and again, I don't expect him to be a thug or, give big hits. But I would think in the corners you would take a hit to make a play. Now, you're absolutely right. And I hope he's another developed gem that we sign cheap, that comes in, dominates. I think he always had a really good first pass out of the zone.
Mm-hmm.
He can skate. So I'm on board. I want him to do well. I want a lot of the prospects to do well. As far as, I go by the last time he played. And our management, our coaching, the way we were developing was just horrendous. So hopefully he comes back. And,
at the very least, he can't be any worse than what we've already taken out.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So,
yeah.
Yeah, that's the key thing, I think, is the main purpose of him signing back to, not only in the fact that you had his NHL rights, but also you lost guys like Mark Pysyk and Colin Miller, so you needed that depth at defense, and, it'll either be a hit or a miss. If he shows up, great. If not, he's signed to a 1-year deal, and, he was already in your system. So we'll see what happens to Lawrence Pilot. If he'll get playing time up here or in Rochester or both, or maybe Adams is working a backdoor deal and midway point the season, maybe he'll make a trade. You never know. But another big thing that the Sabres did acquire during free agency, we stole one of Toronto's bigger defensemen, something that Kyle Dubas didn't want to let go, but he did because the asking price was too high. Ilya Babushkin, right?
Labushkin, yeah.
Labushkin, 28 years old. Just got paid under $3 million, and he's a large physical defenseman.
Oh, yeah.
I know a lot of fans were kind of complaining that we need size, we need grit, and I think hopefully that'll help address some of the fans out there that weren't happy. What are your takes on Ilya, guys?
I was thrilled. At first I was like, who? And yeah, I had to do a little bit of reading, but he's the actual polar opposite of somebody like Bryson or Pilot. Big, strong, physical, goes out of his way to almost hit. He'll fight. I've seen him drop his gloves a few times on the highlights. I was kind of psyched. I think he's going to really shore up the back end. I know he doesn't have a lot of foot speed, so against the quicker teams, he might struggle a little bit. So maybe that's where you put maybe one of the quicker guys in, like Bryson or Pilot. But I think pairing him with somebody like Powers and giving Powers a green light to go would be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a long time, I think, since we really had that, really stay-at-home defenseman back there. That's what I think he got in 97% in his defensive
zone game.
So don't expect a lot of goals. Don't, I don't know what type of, he's a wonderful passer, but the guy to me reminds me of those old school 80s, 90s stay-at-home defensemen, drop the gloves, lay somebody out, and I'm all for laying out anybody in our division. So I'm pretty stoked. I do hope in a way, maybe somewhere through free agency, maybe a trade to a cap-strapped team. I'd still love to take somebody back that has a little bit more grit, but I know this year, I mean, who knows? I guess if you're on the verge of making the playoffs, they'll see where they are, but I think he's going to be a great mentor for the kids, and I think it'll be nice them knowing he's there. They don't have to look over their shoulder as much, especially on the back end, so...
Definitely going to be our Ivan Drago back there on the back end. Again, for you fans that are looking for, as we've mentioned, blinding foot speed, highlight reel goals, offensive capability, it's not in his game. But what he brings to the table is something that young defensemen need, is that stay-at-home defenseman. Us older fans will remember one of our favorites, Mike Ramsey, who was that Olympian who didn't surprise anybody. And Mike could play an entire game and you'd never even notice him on the stat sheet because he just played a perfect game. He was so defensively well-rounded, and I'm hoping that this guy mirrors that, where you just, was he on the ice? Did he really play? I didn't hear his name, because his defensive game is so sound and he does it so well and so quiet that, that's what you're going to want to see. It helps the penalty kill, because you've now got another stable defenseman out there who can penalty kill. You've got some grit. You've got a teammate who's going to stick up for the kids and not get pushed around. Not that the kids are going to get pushed around. We've seen Darlene stick up for himself, and Yoki Haru and
Samuelson.
But Cousins and as the guys come together as a team, they stick together. You don't have to be big to be tough. Ask Danny Gare. But I think it again addresses toughness, defensiveness, veteran stability, cost efficiency.
Oh yeah. Well, don't forget too, I think he was one of the leader in the Leafs in block shots. The man block shots like the Rammer used to do. And
again, that anchor back there that you need for those kids to say, go
play your game.
Go play your game, and I'm back here for you.
Yeah, if you've ever watched Powers' game, and a lot of the few goals he got in the few games he played for us, he would drop down below the circle, and it's just, I'm sure it's going to be nice for him to know that a guy is back there watching the back door,
Having played defense for so long, one of the toughest skills a defenseman need is to be able to read a play from transition to offense, and when is that moment when you go in. Young defensemen, as they develop that skill, that ability to read a play, will make mistakes, and now you've got a guy who's
Right.
and the plus side of that is the way Donnie coaches,
Yeah,
where he
absolutely.
says, guys, go play your game, go do what you're good at, have fun with it. Don't be sound, be smart, but go enjoy your game. And this guy is just another layer of support back there, and for our goalies.
Mm-hmm.
So that our goalies aren't getting crowded or pushed around or roughed up. Now, this guy isn't going to be on the ice every shift. He's either going to be a second pair, third pair defenseman, maybe, 10, 12 minutes a night, depending on how much we take penalties.
I'm thinking more like 15, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because I think if he's paired with Powers is going to get more ice
He'll eat
time
more
than 10,
minutes.
12
That's
minutes.
true.
If they use Power that much, they may be easing him into the lineup.
They
so.
might, but
might
I
as
don't.
well.
I mean, I don't. The kid was very impressive, and I know it was the end of the year last year, but I'm totally looking at him taking that extra step. I hope he doesn't. I mean, I guess you could consider him a rookie this year. Would he
Yes.
get less than 10 games?
Less than 10 games.
So, as long as he doesn't hit the sophomore blues. But from what I've heard at camp, I mean, the guy's just quite the comedian, and he's flashed what he can still do. I mean, the kid has unlimited, ability yet to show. So
It's definitely a great topic to discuss. Adding him and signing back Jacob Bryson, the Sabres have a lot of options at defense, and they're solidifying that core. So I hope him being the player he is, big, tough leadership, everything we've discussed, and the fact that we've stole him from the Leafs, and he can
Yes.
crush the Leafs four times
Yes.
a year. That's just
hey, I told you that's what it would have sold me on Cadre.
that's just gravy on
For the
top of the
Leafs.
mashed potatoes.
4 times a year.
And
but-
just to touch real briefly on the other defensemen that we
Yes.
signed, they're destined for Rochester. They're depth defensemen. They have NHL experience, not a ton. They're not stellar. They weren't super high draft picks. And I'm not going to go into mentioning them all by name because there was about 3 or 4 of them that
I
we
can name
added.
them if you like.
Well,
Sure, go ahead.
Go right ahead.
Jeremy Davies, Cale Klug, and Chase Prisky.
So, again, if things get ugly, if things get desperate, and you need to call someone up to play, you've got depth.
Mhm.
You're not bringing up kids with no experience, with no NHL experience. And it's also going to boost Rochester that
Yeah, so I was just gonna say the people there are quite happy they were brought in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
So,
I don't.
you know.
I don't want to say that the Sabres ruined Rochester's
No,
chance at a
no,
Calder. I
no.
would never do that because the parent club is why Rochester exists. And sorry, Rochester fans, I know you're all in on your team, and we're behind you 100%
Absolutely.
too.
And you
We-
are getting a lot of good prospects, so we might be taking Berturk on Krebs, but
with the depth that we had at the time, the injuries, we pulled so many good players out of Rochester that it damaged them in the standings and their chemistry and their chance to make a run. Now you've got more depth. We've got Michael Hauser back, the savior back
The house
there.
cat is back.
yeah.
and hey, Vinny.
And Vinny's
Vinny,
back. Yeah, we
yes,
don't want to forget
Vinny.
Vinny. We'll talk about
We'll
Vinny
get
in a
into
moment.
him.
But again, those were important signings. They're not earth shakers. They're not Nazem Kadris and Johnny Gaudreau's that other teams are
Which
spending their money
Columbus
on.
you can have Johnny Hockey.
We'll talk
We'll get
about
into
that
that in a
minute,
little bit.
but,
Sorry, I gotta take my dig. Sorry.
Just to include the rest of those free agent signings, you
Yeah.
guys are valuable.
Yeah.
You're important. It's part of the team. It's all part of the depth and all part of the plan.
Well, I kept freaking, not to interrupt you, I kept kind of freaking, well, wait, this guy's available, or this guy, and not any high-end free agents, just the B level, maybe, throw him on the wing, and now that I think about it, and I've been watching development camp, it's just like, no, I definitely don't want them taking JJ's spot or Quinn's spot. I'd like them to compete. I also don't want to hand them the job. And that's where I guess I was hoping maybe still he brings in Sonny Milano or he makes a trade to a cap-strapped team. But I just wanted to throw that out there. You also don't want to hand these kids jobs either and go, oh, here you go. You're the third line winger. But I definitely don't want jobs taken away by these high-priced, some of them underachieving, not all, underachieving players that get paid way more than they should. What do we
Right.
call it? Free agent stupid day? Because it really is.
We'll cut into that a little bit. Let's just finish up what we as a team have before we dive into the league and other
yeah.
teams. So, like we were saying, those guys, their depth for Rochester, we don't want to gut out our farm team, and they play a crucial role. We might get JJ coming up, and we might slot Kulik or somebody else in. So, keep your farm team strong, keep it safe, and those guys are definitely a part of it. So, like we discussed, what we just mentioned, Vinny Hinestroza, Victor Olofsson back in Buffalo. Victor Olofsson, people talked about a little bit. He was kind of higher up on the RFAs around the league. A lot of them still aren't signed, like Patrick Laine and such, or teams are kind of beating around the bush trying to get deals done. So, what are your thoughts about Vinny? What are your thoughts about Victor Olofsson?
I definitely like Victor on a 2-year deal. He was had an injury a large part of the first half, I believe, came back, finished strong. I was a little worried about his even strength game, but it looks like he proved me wrong, or I should say he, kind of proved everybody wrong that he could only play power play minutes. I'm really happy with his contract. 2 years is great. I think on that wing, given this, I'm really hoping Casey Middlestat has a bounce back year. That's my boy. Again, I'm going to get a lot of hate comments. Some people are really down on Casey, but again, got screwed up by a lot of coaches, injuries. I'll just leave it at that. I'm hoping maybe paired with somebody that can really pass him the puck. The guy's easily a 30-goal scorer. Vinny, I've always liked. He was one of the few free agents I was hoping we'd sign back. Quick, gritty, don't need size to be gritty. Gets to the net, again, wasn't healthy most of the year. If he was, guaranteed the guy probably would have had 20 goals. So I'm happy with both signings.
Hinestroza, amazing foot speed, great forechecker, great guy to have on your team. Loves the city, loves the team.
Yeah.
We did see him smile twice. So I definitely think that as an addition to the team, fits within the budget, wants to be here as a third line winger. If you can get 20 goals out of it at that cost, it's
That's
perfect.
a steal.
It's perfect.
Absolutely.
Olofsson, tough year. The injuries did set him back, but I've seen progress in his game, his development away from the puck, which is the part that we were talking about where he was lacking, his play away from the puck. Not just being the big shot. Did make some phenomenal passes towards the end of the season. And again, not to keep bringing up money, but it's what makes the world go around. Comparatively, statistically, his numbers put him in line for a lot more money than what he's getting.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think comparatively too, when you talk about the fact that he's an RFA with arbitration rights, the fact that the Sabres and him didn't go to arbitration, they were able to work out a contract.
Olofsson, you're talking about.
Yep.
Okay.
Really speaks to his character, that he wanted to be here, that he was confident that a deal would get done somewhere because it's up to the agent too, and that he also realized that his game had to change from just saying I'm a shooter to I have to bring more to the table.
More of a complete game.
More of a complete game, and I think that leads to Donnie as his coach and Victor too as a player to say, you're right, I do need to do that.
I think too, obviously he loves the city, and I agree with you. I think he could have got a little bit more in arbitration. I think they compared Ottawa's Norris to him, who had almost equal amount of numbers, games played, and he got north of $7 million.
He signed, I believe, 8 years, $8 million.
Okay, so I mean, I was all for keeping Olofsson. He's another one. He was in a lot of rumors, and I'm like, why? Why do you want to? These guys are just starting to kind of come into our own. We don't want to trade them yet. And, let's give it another year. Let's see what they're capable of, I'm really excited, and I think, our team's definitely going to be better than last year, for sure.
I have to say I agree for both signings. Vinny, I love his speed, his tenacity, and Victor, I was kind of one of those people that said he's only good on the power play.
Mm-hmm.
He can only score from one side. He doesn't forecheck well. He's bad on the boards. And this past year, like a lot of the players, he's really wowed me with his growth. And played 72 games, scored 20 goals, just under 50 points. And for the value he's at, it's a good signing, and he wants to be here. So that's always a important thing.
And Dad has brought it up before, and management and coaching can completely work wonders for a player. We've seen, I mean, look at Thompson this year. My God, the man did a complete, 360. And I'm really hoping that somebody like Mitzi or even Cousins, in a way, is able to take that next step. I really completely believe in Adams, and I keep saying it. Donnie, and most people will agree we're set up for success just like the Bills. So
if you want to make the playoffs this year, which we all do,
yeah,
it's necessary that they make the next step.
oh
Yeah,
yeah, they need
absolutely.
to make the next step, y'all. So I also read too, if like, not to go back to goaltending, if it wasn't there and they wanted to make that next step, he might go in the trade route. Not sure about that. Just something I had read through another, I think it was TSN. So I'm hoping it doesn't come to that. I'm really hoping we're ready to take that next step. And I think we were one of the best teams in the league in the second, third half of the season. So, and I've seen Donnie's speeches, and as hard as you play, give more, give more, give more. And, this team is like a brotherhood, and, they're here to play for each other. So
They legit seem to have a lot of fun together.
oh yeah, they do, absolutely.
Which is a key to success.
It is. You look at the Breer Drury days, here I go. Those guys played for each other. The days with Pekka, they played for each other, and those were the more successful teams. I hate to say it. I'm talking about more current teams, not the French Connection, even though they loved each other too. Anybody that loves one another, it's like a brotherhood. They play for each other, and they seem to always have that success more often than not. So,
Absolutely. Well, the Sabres, I think, did a lot of good things over the off season, and it's still going on between the draft and free agency. We discussed it today in the past few episodes. Adams, I think, filled the few holes we have that we needed in goaltending and defense, and maybe he can add a top six forward. He's still waiting to sign a few guys like R2 and UPL, but I think overall he's in pretty good shape. So while we're moving on from our free agency, let's discuss...
Just to touch on one other thing, I want to make one other quick statement about free agency. I think one of the really other key important factors that the Sabres provided us with free agency is the things that they didn't do. They didn't give away assets for pieces, and they didn't overspend. As Jay mentioned, free agency is GM Idiot Day, where you go out and you buy, a rusted out Chevy, and you pay a Cadillac price for it because you got to have it. And ultimately, that does damage to your franchise down the road. And there's very, very few teams, not to break into our free agency conversation earlier, but there's very, very few teams, if any, that have $10 or $12 million players on their roster that have won the Stanley Cup.
yeah, absolutely.
So all you folks that wanted Johnny Gaudreau or Nazem Kadri or the big splash here for $10 million or $9 million, we've been down this road already. We already had our $10 million player. And it's not that our guys, when they're top of the leagues in statistics, they're not going to be asking for their money too, but at least they're your own. You're not getting them at 27, 28, 29, where they've already had their glory days and filled someone else's stadium, and now you're going to be paying them for leftovers.
Well, and nobody knows more than me. You know how I am on free agency. I do not shut off my phone, the radio, but I
we were
really...
glued to the TV the whole
Oh,
day.
yeah. I mean, and
Well,
I get it, and I get it. I'm like, what about him? Oh, my God, he's gone. What about him? I get it, and I do think that AMS was probably on a few of them, but it could have been term more than even the money.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I just don't think bottom of my heart he's going to take a spot from one of these kids to play, like you said, Jeff. To take their spot even a half a season. Why would you bother? And then tell this guy you got to sign a two-way contract or you have to sit. And a lot of vets in the league aren't going to want to do that. Now trades could still happen. I think they're still going to see how it goes, what they have, who's going to sign. That's a prospect. Maybe they'll go in a trade, but I don't think I'm really excited for the team as is.
With the level of talent that was out there in this year's free agency and the players who were restricted and who didn't get qualified and who ultimately became free agents,
you
could have built another team with
could.
the talent that was out there, and it would have been a very, very good team.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard as a fan to not sit there and be greedy and go, oh, I want this player and I want that player and this guy's good, and
It's like
maybe we can
Christmas
get this one
shopping.
cheap. And when you're sitting there and you're going, how many forwards do we have? Let's see, we've got 12 spots. Well, we've already got 11 guys, waiting on a couple others that are RFAs, our own, and it's like, well, that's all the roster spots. Where are you going to fit these guys? So it was really hard. It was really hard. Walking into a candy store with full pockets of money and going, I want to buy something, but I can't.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we were in on a few. If you go by rumors, some of them I tend to believe a little bit, but I think it was more term than even giving him $4 or $5 million. I think it was.
I'm sure he
I
had
want
some
a 3 or
interest.
4 year contract, and he's like, no.
I'm sure Kevin explored every option. If
Yeah.
it made sense for the team and it was made sense for the future, I'm sure he explored every option as he's explored
Right.
Jacob Chikrin, adding him to the
Yeah,
roster.
yeah.
So
And the Patrick Kane rumor here, which, by the way, people, I keep saying it, you can get him for free next year if you really want him. Why would we trade for him?
Well, let's
So-
dive into our discussion. You guys both mentioned kind of the point of view as a Sabres player or Kevin Adams in the organization. Let's turn it the other way as hockey fans, because the signings that these teams have done are going to change the league this year. They're going to change the way teams are. Some are going to get better. Some are definitely going to get worse. So, any big names that kind of stick to you that you go, what? Why did you sign there? Why did you sign at this money? Like, what are your thoughts on free agency?
50 half the league. I think Stevie Y went out and tried to. Honestly, we finished, and we're still rated finishing ahead of Detroit and Ottawa and below Boston. And I think he looked at it at the end of the year and was like, whoa. And again, they're not as deep on prospects, even though they have a few in the lineup that are very good. But he went out and got Kopp, who's a defensive forward. He went out and got Perron, who's a power play specialist. Ottawa went and got DeBrennick, Claude Giroux. I think almost to me, Giroux's almost like an Oposo. He's going to give you some goals, but I think he slipped down to like 18. I mean, I'm not still overly impressed. I'm sorry. Detroit maybe I'm not worried. You heard a couple people, oh my God, they got so much better. People, I'm not worried about it. I still think, out of our division, we've probably still got one of the best defenses. Sorry, again, goaltending is a question. I think the Leafs got worse.
Absolutely worse.
Matt Murray is another Peter Mrazek, very injury prone. Samsonov could be a good goalie, question mark, but with that horrendous defense they play, Montreal. So, I mean, yeah, I think, I know Marty Biron was on, and I guess he told TSN he didn't expect us in the playoffs. I think we're going to, and if I know Donnie and his team, we're going to be scratching and climbing to climb into that wild card spot. With the exception of maybe Detroit, people tweak their team. I wasn't really overly impressed, and my God, what is Florida doing? So, and Tampa put all that money or 3 or 4 signings. I mean, again, as some of these guys too, they signed. Palat goes to New Jersey. Palat is an okay regular season guy. He's a playoff guy. So yeah, they brought him in for grit. He's going to maybe give you 15 goals, but I mean, you got to get into the playoffs to really see his magic. Sorry. So not overly impressed. I'm not really worried. You know, that's my 2 cents.
Very good.
You can't control what the other teams do. You can only control your own destiny.
True.
A lot of Sabre fans on social media were panicking that everybody else got better and we did nothing. It's the job of the GM to make his team better every year, unless you are the GM of Chicago. So the idea that
Or Vegas.
or Vegas, which or the Islanders, who signed absolutely nobody.
Yep.
Thank you, Islanders. We appreciate that. Every team is working every year to get better. No GM sits there and says, "I want my team to be worse," except for those few that we mentioned. So, to sit there and say that they improved and we didn't, well, our talent is going to get better.
From within.
From within. So, yeah, they added pieces. That doesn't mean those pieces are going to have success where they're at. As we mentioned, Toronto, got worse. Thank you. Appreciate that. Love to see you guys fail. Matthews, like you, but your team...
well, Jeff, and let me interject,
Montreal going
here.
nowhere.
I mean, these contracts they gave out, and I can almost guarantee it, these 4 or 5 years to some of these relics, they're going to be wanting to trade them by the deadline or within 2 years. You understand
Exactly.
Yeah.
I heard some commentators talking about what a wonderful job Jarmo Kekalainen is doing in Columbus. And from my standpoint, you've got a GM there who's basically wrecking that franchise. And again, I'm sitting on a couch in my garage talking to you folks as opposed to being a GM of a team. But when you've got 3 high-end players that you let go to free agency and you've got nothing back, I question that. When you take Johnny Gaudreau, who's 27 or 28,
Yes.
and you sign him, and you sign him to a 7-year deal, so now you're talking when this guy is free out of your organization, he'll be 34. You've tied up $10 million worth of cap space. Doesn't produce for you in the playoffs, and you're hoping that in the next few years the salary cap is going to go up so you can continue to sign your own players. I've seen it time and time again where you handcuff yourself to an aging veteran, pay them big money, and hope they're going to bring your team success. And Johnny, while he's a phenomenal hockey player, also doesn't really fit the character of Columbus as a team who's kind of a grinding, power forward, strong team where he's more of a slick skater and a talented person. So again, I question those things. I question,
disappears in the playoffs. That's a major one.
Right. I question Ottawa deciding all of a sudden that they want to spend money.
Yeah.
I question.
Well, you guys are forgetting though the root cause of this. Why do you think Detroit's bringing in players? They don't have the prospects we do, at least not ready.
Detroit's got talented players, but Dylan Larkin is coming up on another contract within a few years. And I'm sure Dylan Larkin is sitting there going, when is this franchise going to have some success? When am I going to stop being the only piece? When am I going to have some winning that I see other young players who were in my draft, they're getting and I'm not getting? So I see Steve Yzerman going, I got to bring something here so that this kid is willing to stay.
Or maybe it becomes expendable. All I'm saying is I believe we have one of the deepest prospect pools.
We do.
So in reality, we really don't have to bring a whole lot in. Give it a year or two, and I'm hoping that's what our management's hoping, and shebang. And I don't have to overspend for Johnny Gaudreau's rusty jockstrap. So this is all I'm saying.
And to say that other teams got better, Toronto got worse. Philly, we know, is going to be a dumpster fire.
Boston brought back relics again, even though I love Bergeron. I mean, really.
The Islanders stayed the same. Columbus, who knows?
Rangers let a few of their good players walk, like Rooney and
Yeah, they got
Blackwell
Trocheck,
and-
but they let a little bit too much grit go, you know.
Well, they picked up Trocheck, but they gave away Kopp, who's essentially the same player.
Mhm.
Except one's a winger and one's a center.
Mhm.
Right.
I question some of their moves. You know, and again, you know, Drury, the third best GM in the league. I have some questions there.
Mhm.
And of course, again, we'll all see how it plays out. It's going to be fun to see how well this video ages. But
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
true.
to sit there and say, well, everybody else got better and we just didn't do anything.
Yeah, I'm like, then, you know, don't be
You
a
know what?
fan.
It got better, folks. It got
Mhm.
better. You got stabilized goaltending. You've got a solid 6D, and you've got 4 lines worth of guys. And if those 4 lines, somebody falters, you call up Rochester and you say, send me up one of them kids. At least we have the option to do something different instead of sticking Anders Bork and John Hayden in
Or
the lineup.
Cody Eakin.
Or Cody Eakin.
Yeah,
Cody
come on.
Eakin.
You know, sticking these guys in the lineup and going, you know, same team, different flavor, and it comes out all tasting bad. So,
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
it's amazing to see in the off season how teams react and what they do. There were teams like us that added a few pieces, teams that didn't do anything,
Pittsburgh.
teams that overspent to get pieces, and then teams that just went, oh my God, I was looking for this guy.
Yeah.
Now I have to sign so and so because I need it. So they overpaid. So free agency was really crazy. There's still a few names floating out there. Everyone's still waiting on where Kadri's going to go. Klingberg.
Nita Ryder. I
Phil
think Sonny
Kessel's still
Milano was
available.
another name.
So we shall see in the hopefully by next week or later we'll finally touch base and some of these guys will go. But I think we've covered some free agency, our free agency for now. So let's move into the fun part we were all waiting on, which was development camp this week down at the Harbor Center. Any names from what you've read, what you've seen, videos, pictures? Is there anyone that you guys see or think that stands out, that's impressive? I know you mentioned Powers.
Yuri Kulik. Great hands. Hell of a shot. Plays like a man. I believe he's in a men's league. Very high on him. And I'm going to go by video and what was actually said about him. Levi, out of this world, made a Hasek-like save in development camp. If anybody was there on
Jack Quinn.
Jack Quinn,
Actually.
sorry. I had to keep looking at the video over and over and over again. Just great, quick, very quick feet, quick glove.
What's
And of
amazing
course,
about
you
that
know,
save,
JJ and Quinn are, you know,
just to interrupt you on that save, what's amazing about it is he starts to skate backwards.
I know.
He
falls.
stumbles.
Yeah,
He
falls.
did.
He starts to
fall. We were like- I
stumble
was
and
like-
he recovers.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was just, I mean, the guy almost looked like a Hasek type in the net. I couldn't believe it. Of course, JJ, and I guess too with JJ, from what they were saying is, they talked to Pekka, and Pekka said he doesn't even realize that this kid doesn't even realize how good he can even be. So coming from somebody like Mike Pekka, he's like, he worked on his defensive game. He's more physical, just an all-round, very good, skill, complete player. Quinn, I think he's going to have more of an offensive side. And I was not down on him last year. Definitely thought he had to go back to Rochester. But what I've heard and then a little bit I've seen, he's even taken a really big jump this year. So, you know, I don't know so much on the defensive end, but definitely all skill up front.
The recent 3 draft picks all signed. All 3 afforded themselves very well in the tournament. The goalies look phenomenal.
Portillo, too.
What's great is the guys that all of you are raising question marks on, Johnson and Portillo,
Yeah.
whether they're going to sign. As long as they're being honest and forthright, they want to be here. They just have their own individual goals
Yeah.
that they want to accomplish in college, and that's fantastic. Even if Levi and Portillo turned pro tomorrow,
Yeah,
they wouldn't be in Rochester.
right, no.
They'd still
wanna
be
finish.
down in Cincinnati, or they might be even on a lower tier
Juniors.
junior club somewhere. So there's no panic and there's no rush in their development because these kids are hugely skilled, but they have to develop. They have to grow up. They're boys playing a man's game, and it takes time, especially for goalies and defensemen. Portello came out and said this feels like home to him. He thinks the organization is phenomenal. Doesn't sound like a kid who's saying, I'm just going to go back to college and see what happens. You know, I get it. We've seen this happen with Cal Peterson where Murray screwed that up and the kid went south.
Out west, actually. But.
Yeah, out west. But the level of talent that's been brought in is phenomenal, and it's not just on, well, we hope they're going to be good.
Right.
Or
right.
they have the potential to be good. They're good now. They have the potential to be NHL players, which is now rests in their hands, which is what Donnie talked about in the video, that everybody works hard.
Yeah,
you have to work harder.
Absolutely.
And but it's up to them.
It is. It's you know, they're in charge of their own destiny, and you would just hope that you know they're ready to get there and achieve that and put in the work and the effort.
You know,
Sure.
Donnie said to them all in the room, who wants to play in the NHL? And they all raised their hand. And he said, well, of course you're all going to raise your hand. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here.
Right.
And basically saying, well, how do you get there? You've already taken your first small step. But again, it's bright for the organization to have that talent and have that skill level there. Thank you, Vegas, for the draft pick. Probably a player who would be playing on your roster within a year or two if you didn't have to give Patio away.
Oh, wow.
We're crying you a river over here. You know, say hi to Jack for us. You know, I know someone posted on one of the social media sites about what it's cost Vegas already to acquire Jack Eichel. Not to derail our conversation, but.
Yeah,
take a look at it, and
it's a lot.
And you know, no hard feelings for Jack when he's not playing here in Buffalo. Hope he finds his gear and gets his career together and puts up great numbers and finds happiness.
Don't want you
somewhere.
to win a cup.
Yeah,
there, but
they won't.
But again, from the standpoint of free agency and everything we've talked about, if you're a GM. Look at the damage you're doing to your franchise in the long term as far as your short-term goals. I know I read something today that if Vegas doesn't have success this year, all in likelihood that GM is going to get fired. Toronto, you've had Kyle Dubas for 4 years. You've been through 6 goalies in 4 years. So
and 3 coaches.
Yeah, and 3 coaches. So either, you know, something's wrong with what you're doing with the players, or something's wrong with your organization that it's not fitting, because all these hockey minds aren't failures.
Yeah.
You've had good goalies. Until Matthews and the rest of the guys decide they want to play defense, you're never going to win nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to this season. I'm sure you guys are too. I think this leading in you know, this year from last year, we're actually headed in the right direction. Yeah, thank you Vegas for Krebs Tuck and our
Osland.
16 overall pick. I'll take it. No offense, but you shouldn't
I'll
have been as
take
good as you were as an expansion team anyway. So, but yeah, we're headed in the right direction. You know, and it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome to watch for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just seeing, I was able to stream some of the French Connection tournament today at work, and just the oohs and ahs from the audience. There's a big support for them, and the fan base is starting to come back, and it's just good to see that the team is moving in the right direction, and people aren't so nasty and hateful and critical towards the team. They have some faith and believe in it. So I think that's a big thing I got from that too.
You can guarantee, as long as I think Adams would be on board, you know, obviously it starts from the top, and Donnie run this team, they are going to give 100% effort. And I'll take, what he said last year, they may lose because of inexperience or youth, or they just made a mistake, but there will never be a lack of effort. And they want that blue collar team back with more upside and more skill. And if they can get it together, and Donnie we trust, thank you Meatballs, it's going to be a hell of a team, man. Enjoy the ride, folks.
One of the things that showed up from development camp too is that the guys who were here in Rochester last year and showed up now for development camp, and of course all the players were super excited for development camp. They loved getting together and they loved playing in front of the fans. But the ones that were boys are growing into men. They've shown a lot of hard work and a lot of growth and development. Paul Hamilton was reporting about how our wonderful defenseman Samuelson is just such a commanding presence on the ice now, especially with those young kids, and how he's put in the work.
Right.
And they were discussing on whether he's an elite defenseman or not, and how it's classified, and how he has the potential to maybe not be the guy who puts up the big numbers, the goals and the assists and all the glory, the defenseman trophy,
like a Seabrook, maybe,
but
the two-way defenseman.
But who really is the and as he mentioned, it was the little things.
Yep.
His stick positioning, where his feet are, how he looks at the ice, all the things that you want defensemen and kids to learn in their development. That now 2 years, 3 years, he's got.
Yeah.
And what a phenomenal draft pick that
God.
was.
Yep.
That you just can't find these guys growing on trees everywhere. And again, pairing somebody like Samuelson and Labushkin gives you, just a dynamic pairing on killing penalties.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
It's such a good mixture on D to have him and Labushkin, and then some steady kind of, guys that are going to maybe get their peak, or they're starting to, like Yoki, and then the big offensive powerhouses in the future, like of Darlene and Powers, that are really going to cement just an offensive defense, you know?
Yeah.
So.
And kudos to the guys who are here and who have moved on to other teams. Congratulations on getting jobs.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Mark Pysick,
love you,
Colin Miller, Mark Jankowski, John Hayden,
Dustin Tokarski, Aaron Dell.
Aaron Dell, if you do find, he did find a job
San
back
Jose,
to San Jose.
back to the Sharks.
And even Eakins, I'll give the guy love. He won a lot of face-offs. By the time we got him, he had his best year. So what are you going to do?
But, good on you guys that, you're still going to be contributing, and you found jobs somewhere else, because nobody likes to see somebody out of work. You were a Sabre, and you'll always be a Sabre, and, good on you for where you ended up.
Absolutely. Well, I think we're going to get towards the end of our episode number 3. Just a brief announcement before we finish. As we're heading into August and September and into the fall season, we do plan to cover other Buffalo sports. So as we get into preseason and the season for football, we'll start discussing more of the Bills and the Bills game and our feelings. And while we're screaming at the TV on Sundays, we'll give our notes, and then we'll get into other sports, lacrosse, and everything Buffalo we cover. We just don't cover Sabres, but we focus mainly on hockey. So if you're a Bills fan or you like all the sports, we will be discussing that in the future.
We'll even be discussing the Mets in the playoffs.
There you go.
Not that all of you, because we know you're all Yankees fans, so
but
enjoy that, but we're Mets fans, so let's go Mets.
And if anybody has any comments, again, just leave them in the link. We're going to do weekly as much as we can. We are on vacation this week, so we'll see what happens. But until then...
And thanks to those who have watched.
Buffalo.
We appreciate all
Thank
you
you very
viewers.
much.
Thank you very much.
Peace.
Peace.